Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. This is Glenn Kendall with Concourse Hosting, and today I'm going to be talking about solicitor performance. I'm going to be building some worksheets and dashboards in Tableau, and we call this series Paint by Numbers because it's really meant to walk you through just step by step how to do something. And so we're going to just start from scratch and build out some really cool and interesting stuff related to solicitor performance. Usually I like to wait a couple of minutes for people to come in, but instead of that I'm going to just talk a little about our webinar series in general. So we're going to be doing these on a weekly basis. It's going to be at the same time every week on Thursdays, 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern. And we're basically going to have three kinds of webinars. One is this, the Paint by Numbers series, which is meant to just increase your comfort with using Tableau, show you some tricks, and just get you in using it, and hopefully be able to come away with some useful worksheets and dashboards you can use yourself. The second is one that we call Center of Enablement. So that's going to be more about process. It's going to be more about user adoption. It's going to be more about how you push Tableau, roll Tableau out to your organization and things related to that. Because it's one thing to get in and build something, and then it's quite another to say, okay, how are we going to deploy this organizationally? And then the third, to mix things up a bit, is we're going to have a guest series. And so the topics there will just vary widely depending on who the guest is. And so I think the next one is in 2 weeks. We're going to have Rebel Saffold, who we had done a webinar with last month. He's going to be our guest speaker, and we're going to be talking about, I can't remember now, I think it's fundraising and donor acknowledgement. All right. One other note I want to make as well is that we are recording this webinar. If you missed last week's webinar, last week was really the first one, again, in the series of webinars that we're doing. If you missed it, you can go to YouTube. So we record them, and a day afterwards, you can, a day or two afterwards, you can go to YouTube and we'll find it on there. Or if you've registered and you missed it, or you're not sure you're going to be available for another one in the future, we'll send you an email with a link, and you can get it that way as well. So this is me. Again, if you're just joining, my name is Glenn. I'm the President and CEO here at Concourse, and that's my avatar there at the top, Dashi from the Octonauts. If you're new to GoToWebinar, here's just a little housekeeping about the control panel. There's a button or an arrow there at the top that you can click on. That's the orange or red arrow. That'll collapse the control panel down so you can see more of the screen and what it is that we're working on, and then pop it back out again if you want to see the whole control panel. And then there's a section down there for questions. So go ahead, and as you think of questions, go ahead and enter them. And what we're going to do is really save questions toward the end. I like to save about 15 minutes at the end of the presentation for questions. And so, yeah, just go ahead and type them in as you go. And, like I said, we'll get to them there at the end. So before I get into jumping into the Tableau and building stuff, I want to talk a little about just, big picture what it is that we here at Concourse are trying to do, and just maybe think about what it is, some of the challenges that you have, at your organization with with creating culture. So what we're trying to do is, show you ways that you can use Tableau, show that it has all of these capabilities, and hopefully you'll see the value in it and, move toward adopting that at your organization. I think one of the important things to keep in mind about culture is that, this is really for fundraisers out there, those that are in the advancement services profession. And so I think to start off with, you should see yourself as a member of that organization. Fundraisers, advancement services, of that profession in general. We happen to be a big fan of the Association of Advancement Services Professionals, AASP, and I highly recommend that you check out that organization and become a member. They have a lot of fantastic resources, and think about, and one of the reasons for joining a profession, an organization like that upholds sort of the best practices of the profession, is that you need to think of yourself as, kind of like a chef, right? So a chef, first and foremost, you need to learn your technique. You need to refine your technique. You need to be a master of your technique. And that really starts out with, what is it in the fundraising and advancement services world that is going to be common regardless of where you work? And if you join the AASP and go on there, and you'll see they have a whole library of best practices. And the idea with the best practices is, right, that's like your beginner cooking skills, your knife skills. Those are the basic techniques that you're going to need to start to become a chef, if you will, within fundraising and advancement services. But then aside from that, there's other parts of the culture as well that I think individually we all need to think about, and think about ways that we can contribute to that. So if you're looking at reporting tools like Tableau, which obviously you are because you wouldn't be here today otherwise, there's a lot of great resources in addition to this webinar that you can look up and find online for free. Use each other as resources as well. Reach out to each other, whether on LinkedIn or the Fund Services mail list. Find out what other people are doing. See what challenges they have, how they're tackling them. Sincerely reach out and talk with each other. And then, go to conferences. Meet each other that way. We happened to be a sponsor at the AASP Summit this past year, and just what a fantastic experience that was. Being able to meet people firsthand and just get inspired by all the different things that people are doing. And then just one other note that I'd like to make about culture is that, be an inspiration to each other, and really don't be so hard on yourself. I just wrote a blog post about this, but I was listening to a podcast the other day with the famous chef Graham Kerr, the Galloping Gourmet, he's known as, right? So Graham Kerr was talking about the culture of food in France versus in America. And, why is it in France, that food is such a big part of their culture, and just keeps, it's been that way, and it will continue to be that way. And he said, it starts with just at home. The wife is at home, he says. This is Graham talking in his podcast. He says, she's cooking her meal, they're at home, and the husband comes in and he's like, "Oh, my darling, what are you making? This smells wonderful. I can't wait to taste this." And he's complimenting her, and it's part of their relationship and part of the culture to have that, to talk about the food. And even if she's not a very good cook and what she makes isn't that great, they sit down and they enjoy it and they eat it anyway. But by doing that, by complimenting her, and by having that as being part of the culture, she is encouraged, and she wants to continue cooking. And because of that, she gets better and better and better. And I think you need to think of that same way, whether it's anything else you're tackling or Tableau. Like, we need to be encouraging each other and also yourself, you know. The first things that you're going to make in Tableau, you know, they might not taste that great. You might burn them. That's okay, you know. That's okay. We need to have this culture where we are encouraging each other and, you know, trying to look at the bigger picture of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. All right. Enough about that. Let's dive in here and start taking a look at Solicitor stuff. Okay. So one of the challenges right off the bat that I have when I'm looking at solicitor information, when I'm looking at any other kind of data, I can use like your organization's, you know, so-and-so's organization's actual data and just kind of hide who it is and those kind of details. You can't really do that with solicitors because it's names, right? It's names and proposal names and all of this, and so where to start out with is that I really have to make some pretend data, if you will, to start with. So to do that, I am using this site called Mockaroo. Now, I want to walk you guys through this and show you what I'm doing in here, because I think there's some real value in you being able to do this as well. So again, this is part of your learning, right? You're learning your skills, learning your knife skills or whatever for Tableau. Being able to just play with data and have some test data and just kind of figure out what it is that you're doing first, maybe before you start with real data, that's okay. Anyway, so the site, Mockaroo, it basically will spit out test data. So here's what I did in Mockaroo. I started out with some solicitors. So I just opened our good buddy Excel here, and here's our solicitors. You may recognize some of these names from Simpsons. One of the things you can do in Mockaroo is you can after you add these in, you can say what frequency do I want them to appear. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is making a bunch of proposals, right? So we're going to be looking at solicitor performance over the past year. So I need to make a bunch of data that said, here's my solicitors, how many proposals did they generate? And in this case, I'm really looking at major gifts. Not worried about annual fund and that kind of solicitor performance. Is really, we're worried about major gifts. So here's my major giving officers, my solicitors. Here's the frequency with which they're going to appear. The next thing I did is I've made some proposals. So I want to have unique proposals generated by the system. So here I just came up with some sort of placeholders for things. There's going to be a gathering, a scholarship, a planned gift, a gift, and then this is more of a capital campaign related item that's going to be for this new Octonaut auditorium that we're building. And then amounts. Here's some amounts. Our major giving level at our Simpson University happens to be $5,000. And I just entered some other amounts here. And we're going to just allocate and say, okay, maybe here's some percentages with which these kind of gifts would happen. And then I also created some actions. So my action types basically have phone call, email, face-to-face. Again, I'm just making pretend data. So what I did is they have a section here called data sets. This program's free, by the way. If you want to create a data set that's just 1,000 rows, which is what we're going to do today, this program's free. If you want to do more than 1,000 rows, it's like $50 a year, something like that. So I just hit upload data set, browse to a file, in this case, actions, and then I just named it. I already did this already, so I'm not going to go through it all again, but I created all of these values here. Okay. Then I went to schemas. So this is, I'm going to create two different data dumps. One is the solicitors and all the proposals that they've created over the past year, and the other is solicitor actions. So we're going to make two separate dashboards, one around proposals, one around actions. So in this case, I'm pulling out the solicitor, the unit that they belong to, which is the college in this case. I put in this other field called color. It's just going to create a random color. Then I couple that with a proposal. So I just kind of create random proposal names, if you will. The date asked. So I'm really looking at data from the past year. Just having it randomly generate from, proposals in the last year. That's all we're going to do. The amount is going to randomly pull from that amounts field, right, according to the weighted values that I had in there. And then I have another data set I put together here called percent funded. And this is just to sort of randomly come up with, okay, some of these, they start out as pledges, obviously, what percentage of these are funded. Okay, so I do all of that. I can generate up to 1,000 rows for free. And so I just say download data. And there it is. My solicitor performance. So I'm going to copy that and move it to a folder I have over here. Just going to overwrite what I had in there before. Okay, so that's one data set, and then the other is actions. So in this case, I'm just going to pull the solicitor name. The action date, again, it's just going to be a random date during the past year, and the action, what kind of action it was. Download this data. I'm showing you this just because I want to show you, this is just starting from scratch. This is like exporting the data out of Razor's Edge, right? And I want to do this because this is just part of the paint by numbers to start with. I've gone over this a couple of times, but you can, we can do this in a short period of time, just starting with pulling some data fields out. All right, so there it is. I've got my two downloads, and now let's go ahead and launch Tableau and see what we got. So I'm going to connect to those data sets. They are CSV files. You can also connect to Excel, Tableau server, all these other things. If you have Tableau with us, you can connect to the Tableau server. And what we do is we refresh data from your Razor's Edge or your CRM environment, and that's the data source that you're working with. But for today's purposes, we're just saying, okay, let's look at solicitor performance. So this is the one I just created here. So once you connect the data, on this view, I'm at the data source view within Tableau. This shows me just the sample data it's created. So I can just scroll down here real quick and just say, okay, I can see my solicitor. Here's the college, the unit that they're associated with, the color, the proposal, the data was asked, the amount, and the percent funded. Great, I've just got some basic stuff in there. All right, let's go start building things in Tableau now. Let's start with, these are the data fields in here, and they're organized by dimensions and measures. Dimensions are things like categories or dates, and measures are numbers, counts of things. So I'm going to start out with my solicitor, drag that over here, and then the unit they belong to, I want to see it that way as well. So I can see here I've got it broken down in terms of the colleges and which particular solicitor it is. And now I want to start to pull some of that information out. So the number of records here, it generates this automatically. So this is a total count of all the rows that are in there. So this is really the number of proposals that there are altogether, because this is what this really is. I generated a bunch of proposals. So I'm going to rename this proposals. And if I drag this over here, now this will show me the number of proposals in a bar graph format. It just defaults to that by solicitor. Well, I also wanted to look at some of these other things as well. For example, I wanted to look at the amount. I want to drag that over here. You can see it actually doubled the graph, right? So I've got proposals, the number of proposals in one, and amount in the other. That's a little bit confusing. I'm not sure if I like that, and I'm not even done yet, because the next thing I want to do is look at the percent funded. So I want to drag that over and look at that too. The one thing that you can do with Tableau is there's this little show me section over here. So if you want to change the view that you're looking at things, you can just click on, what kinds of charts you want to look at over here. And, it'll jump around to these different things. And some of these might make sense and some of them won't. This is way too much color, way too much information. This is not the kind of thing I'm looking for. I'm looking for just something really boring like this, to be perfectly honest. I want to see the numbers. Show me who's brought in how much money, how many proposals they had, and what percentage of it is funded. The percent funded, so I don't necessarily want to look at the percent funded. I want to see the actual dollars funded. So to do that, I'm going to make a calculated field. So I go up here to the top and hit this little arrow and make a calculated field. And then I can just say amount funded. And that will be the amount. So to reference a value in Tableau, you put it in brackets. So there I did bracket amount times the percentage. Because it's already in Excel as a decimal, I can just reference the value directly itself. And that should give me the actual dollar value. So amount times the percent funded, the amount funded. Boom, there it is. Okay. Let's see here. I think the other thing I want to do is now I can just get rid of percent funded. I don't need to show that. And I want to move the proposals over here. So now I'm seeing the number of proposals by solicitor, as well as the amount they brought in and the amount that's been funded. Okay. One of the things you can also do if you want up here is if you want to see totals, we can show totals. So I can say add all subtotals, and then it will subtotal things by the unit, by the college. So that may be helpful to say, okay, these solicitors I have in the College of Arts and Sciences, together they have this many proposals totaling this dollar amount, and this is the amount that's been funded. So right here, if nothing else, we have just a quick snapshot of what it is that's going on over the past year with our solicitors. From this point here, we can just do a little bit of formatting. We can say, always go in and say, let's make things a little bigger. So we can just change the font size right there. We can do it on a worksheet basis. This that I'm working on right now is called a worksheet. So on a worksheet basis, I can do that. Or I could just do it for individual columns or rows, or just all rows and all columns. Now I can also format the fields themselves. I can say, okay, the amount, I'd like to see that as a dollar value, and let's do it in millions. I didn't need to jump over there. I could have stayed where I was, but dollar value, millions. Okay. Now I'm going to get rid of the subtotals because it's a little bit too much. But just to show you that you could do that, you can add that in there if you want to. All right. Now I'm going to make another worksheet. This time we're going to be looking at the proposals themselves. So we need to create a calculated field here. Remember, I had color that basically have different kinds of proposals. So I had color as a field, and this is a text field, so I'm just going to add a space in there. I'm going to add a bracket and then the proposal itself. And I need to put another plus in. It's helpful if you make an error in here, it tells you this calculation contains an error. So before you continue, it does a little error checking for you. Okay, there's the proposal name. So now, pull the proposal name over, kind of do the same thing I did before. Look at amount funded, the number of proposals. Look at it as a crosstab. This Excel-looking thing over here is called a crosstab. I'm going to organize it so it's in a similar way that it was before. And I've got a lot of proposals in here. Okay. Now I can go ahead and make a dashboard. I'm going to go back and rename these. Okay, this was a blank sheet that I didn't do anything with. This one we call, so I can rename the sheet just like you would in Excel. I'm going to call this Solicitors. I'm going to call this sheet Proposals. So now when I go into my dashboard, a dashboard is a collection of worksheets. Then you can do other things as well within the dashboard, but it's really to bring different worksheets together. So I start out with my Solicitor, so I can literally just drag it over here. I just took this and I'm dragging it over. Then I take Proposals. Now I drag this down here. And then you can link them together. I can go up here. When I click on this window, I get this worksheet selected in the dashboard, and then I can say, use as filter. So I'm going to use this worksheet as a filter for the other worksheet. So when I do that, and I click down here, I'll only see the proposals related to that solicitor. You got that? So that's added a filter now. So if I go back to proposals, it automatically threw a filter in here. And so that's great. So now I can look at the proposals that each solicitor has and look at the details around that. And you can do more formatting and stuff here, but that's pretty cool. Just right off the bat, I can see, and I can, you know, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I want to jump into the next section. But you know, format, you know, again, go over here, change this to currency, change this to currency. That kind of thing. When you change it in the worksheet, it automatically changes in the dashboard and vice versa. Okay. It's 11:30. We've made one dashboard. I want to go ahead and make another one that's related to actions. This one's going to be a little more complicated, a lot more complicated actually. So bear with me as I make this. And I'll make, you know, this information. I'm going to be using some formulas here, so I'll make this information available to you separately, you know, for download as well. Okay. So actions. We're going to start out with, we need to connect another data source. So this was just proposals. So we need to add a data source, the other thing that we exported. So go over here. I'm going to look at solicitor actions now. And here's my data. I can see the solicitor, the action date, what it was, all that good stuff. In this case, Tableau, you know, pulled these two together, so it's actually combined these two together, so I can use them both. But I'm only interested in actions right now. Actually, up here, I want to change the data to, I don't want to have the solicitor performance. I just want to do actions. Okay, so I'll start out with my action date, and then I'm going to do my I need to get just the number of actions, and that's not showing up down here. Measure values. Back to my data source. So I don't want to link these. I'll remove that one. When you make a mistake in Tableau, you can go backwards, so I'm just going to go backwards here, back to where I was. And, all right, I want to add another data source, a new data source, text file, solicitor actions. There we go. All right. What I wasn't seeing before here was the number of records because it was combining those together, and I want to have the actions as a separate value. So this is my number of actions. So I'm going to change this here to actions. I'm counting the number of actions. 1,000, because that's how many are in there. And then I'm going to look at it by date. And we're going to look at it by, say, day. So this is the total number of actions for everybody in the system. So that's probably too much information, right? So we want to be able to consolidate this down and look at it, let's say, maybe on a different level. basically what I want to do is I want to have like a little KPI to say, with a given solicitor, like how many actions do they have and kind of what's the trend for those actions. So in order to do that, I want to be able to track what are not only the actions overall for each solicitor, but then like what are their trends? How are they doing in the last month? How are they doing the month prior to that? So you see, I could do this a couple of ways. I could add solicitors over here, and this would break it down, by solicitor. I could see them this way, but again, that's a little confusing and that's a little bit too much. So instead, another thing I can do is I could make the solicitor as a filter. So I'm only looking at certain ones. Looking at Bart, for example. So here's his actions. Now I want to make some calculations because I want to just not look at his actions up and down, but I want to look at some trends to see how he's doing. So in order to do that, I want to see what has he done over the last month and what has he done the month prior to that, and sort of what's the trend that's going on there. And I'm going to make some KPI values related to that. So the first thing I want to do is I want to look at how he did the last month. To do that, first I need to create a calculated field so that this, I could just put in today's date, but if I go in and look at it tomorrow, today's date, we want that to change automatically over time. So I can just create a calculated field for today, and then in my little cheat sheet over here, here's all the formulas I'm going to share with you later. There's just a date value in there that says, hey, basically get whatever today's date is. So I'm going to make that a value in here. And then I'm going to make another calculated field called last month. Last month is going to be this formula, which basically says, give me the date difference in days between the date that the action occurred and today. And if it's less than 30, if it's happened in the last month, then it will qualify. I'm going to do another calculated field called prior month. Very similar. Here I'm taking exactly the same thing. I'm taking the difference in the date, but here I'm doing if it's greater than or equal to 30 days, so it's not this past month, but the prior month to that, and then also less than 60 days. I'm not going to worry about 31, days that have 30, months that have 31 in it. So this will give me the prior month. Okay. Now, this is great for the dates, but the next thing I need to do is look at the actual actions that took place. So I want to create a field that says actions from last month. And for this, there's a formula that basically is looking at, it's called a lookup of the window sum. So it's looking at that particular set of data within the qualifying field. So we're just looking at, again, last month, and then the number of records here is not a valid field name. Oops. It's actually actions. So don't worry too much about the formula, just know there's a formula that lets us get, the number of actions that happened in the last month. And then one more calculated field here. I'm going to get the actions from the prior month. Okay, we're getting closer. I can pull these over here, actions of the prior month, pull them over. If it's a continuous value, it's in green, and then it tries to make a graph out of it. I'm going to make it discrete. I just want it to be a number. So it gives me a number here. The actions for Bart from the previous month were 15. And then the last month. We'll put this in here. Do the same thing. So prior month was 15. Now it was 16. Is that better or worse? We have to create a calculation to see. We want to see the change between the action of the prior month minus the action of last month. And then actually what we want to look at is the percent change. How are things going? Are there more actions or less actions? Percent change. So for this, I'm looking at the change. And then this value I didn't call prior month actions, I called it actions. Actually, I called it action prior month. I want to rename it so I'm consistent. Actions. When I rename one of my values here, it will automatically change over here as well. That's kind of cool. All right, so then I want to see percentage change. Pull this over. Boom. Discrete. Percentage change. I want to format this. I want to make it a percentage. 1 decimal place is fine. And I can see how he did. All right. Let's consolidate things here a little bit. I'm going to remove this from the window because you'll see in a minute we're going to put this in the dashboard, so the solicitor will be in the other worksheet. We don't need to reference the solicitor again. I want to shrink this window way down, and I want to format these values here and make them more dashboardy, more bigger format. .36 bold format. 36 and bold. This header in here that says actions, I probably don't need that because we already know we're talking about actions. Although when I did that, it got rid of the tick marks as well. So you might want to add the tick marks back, but all right. So here's a little KPI that's showing me the performance related to a particular solicitor. We have a little spark line over here. Collapse this show me down so you can see better. So here's sort of a spark line of how the actions have been for this person over time. And I'm going to make another dashboard. And this one I'm going to rename Actions Come on, keyboard. Action KPI. So for my second dashboard, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to look at solicitors. And this time I'm going to do action KPI. Throw that down there. And let's move this down. Now this is squashed, and I think part of the problem might be is that I'm already filtering on BART, so I can take them out here. Don't need to do that filter. So now I'm looking at all actions throughout the system. I'm not sure why that's squishing down there in the other dashboard. I'm going to try to remove these and do it the other way. Here's my action. Here's my solicitors. Oh, for some reason it keeps squishing down. I think this is why. It's because I have the header still there on the bottom. So if I get rid of that, there we go. Yeah, these little formatting things can be a little bit of a bear to figure out sometimes, especially if you're under pressure, like everyone's watching you. You're at the webinar and everyone's watching you. All right, so I'm clicking on these, nothing's happening. Down here, how do I make that filter apply to the other worksheet? I go back here. I say, use this filter. Boom. There we go. Millhouse is killing it. He went down on his actions a little bit. I think this is actually reversed. Actions prior month, actions last month. That should be the other way around. Prior month, last month. So I've just reversed these values here because the percentage should be flipped. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. Just kind of giving you, the basic concept of what it is that we're doing here. And you can see, if I was to reverse these values or use the different value here rather than the percentage change, you get an idea. But we have this nice little spark line here, so we can see what their actions have been over time, and then we can, if we needed to, we could throw in, a little bit more detail into these things as well. I've gone a little bit over in time. I want to leave some time for questions. So go ahead and type your questions into the window over there, and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, well, if there's, while you're thinking of questions, I'm going to go fix my KPI over here. So what a percentage change. Maybe it was actually the change that I did backwards. Yeah, this should be LM minus PM. Here we go. That looks a little better. So there's, we could also account for the nulls in here to say if it's null, just make it 0 instead. So that would be a quick little fix that we could do in there as well. I don't see any questions coming in. You guys sure you don't have any questions? Totally fine if you don't, but please, if you have any questions, whether it's directly about what it is that I've been working on here today or, you know, just something in general, that's fine. You can go ahead and ask it, and I will just hang out here for another few minutes to see if you have any other questions. Here's a question. In most cases, are the formulas the same formulas used in Excel? They're similar. They are similar. They may not be exactly the same. And in Tableau, things may be a little more complex or sophisticated just because of the way that Tableau does things. But yeah, it'll make sense immediately, because it is very similar to what you're doing in Excel. You know, you'll be able to just look through those calculated fields and it'll make sense. I'll just pop back here and create another calculated field. You know, just to show you, yeah, I mean, some of these should be like, yeah, absolute value and, you know, whatever. Just a lot of these same formulas are going to be what you're used to in Tableau. So it's, or sorry, in Excel. So that makes it easy. So again, you know, that even though the data that I used today was test data, and I just, you know, generated it, the same concepts are going to apply. So it's really just a matter of figuring out, you know, what exactly it is that you want to report on, whether you're more interested in proposals, actions, you want to see a higher level view of the money, and, you know, there's all kinds of ways that you can look at things related to the pipeline. But, you know, as you can see, it's really driven by your data set and what it is that is in there that's available to you. And this data set that I had here was very simple when we have actions. And through these calculations, I was able to say, okay, let's look at these time segments. Let's look at last month. Let's look at the month prior to that, and then do some simple analytics based on that. And you can, you know, have wider trends looking at previous quarter or whatever. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Again, thank you guys so much for coming. I hope this was useful. I hope I didn't go too fast. And, you know, if I did, there's a recording. You can go back and watch it again. But hopefully this will give you some ideas for what you can do. And be sure to tune in next week. We're going to be going over the Center of Enablement and talking about user adoption. And that's going to be Jason Repko is going to be the presenter at that webinar. And then in a couple weeks, we're going to have a guest speaker. And in 3 weeks, we're going to be doing another paint by numbers. I think that one's about maps. No, it's going to be about appeal performance. Yeah. And we'll get to maps here before too long. So anyway, Thank you all again for coming today, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.